Hi everyone, this is Mindy Eggen and welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to dry emboss with your CoverPlate dies, which means we can get more out of our products. First, I want to show you some of the products that I'll be using today. This is the Songbirds on a Branch from Pinkfresh Studio. It has a stamp, stencil, coordinating die, and hot foil plate. Now you don't need all of these. Honestly, I almost always just use the hot foil plate, the die, and the stencil, which are my favorites. So you can purchase these separately. Now here I have the hot foil plate and I have my champagne glimmer foil from Spellbinders. Just kind of lining that up over the hot foil plate so I know about how big to cut my foil. And then I'm going to trim that just with a big pair of scissors. Everybody does their foiling just a little bit different, but this is how I like to do it. I place this over a large piece of Hammermill cardstock. So I have my glimmer foil down onto its shiny side up, my hot foil plate pattern down, and then I like to hold mine down with some washi tape. Now I have my glimmer foil system and my green light is on, which means it's nice and hot and ready to go. So I take my sandwich and I flip it. So my hot foil plate, or the back of my hot foil plate, is touching that hot surface. Then I wait for that light that is blinking right now to turn solid green, which means it's ready to go. I'm going to disengage that platform. So I'm going to pull it completely out and bring it over to my Platinum 6 die cutting machine. Now I also have a top plate that needs to go on top of this. There's actually two plates that I have taped together. This comes with the foil system, and then I just carefully run that through the die cut machine. Now, some people need a paper shim or a couple paper shims. That's really just an experiment. You need to find out what works with your die cut machine. This is what works for mine. I'm going to carefully peel back that washi tape. Now, I like to kind of hold my plate down with my fingernails because that plate is pretty warm. So I just carefully hold that down, remove that tape, and then I just carefully pick up that plate and move it off on the side so it cools off, and I can peel back my foil, and I have this perfectly foiled background. I do have a little bit of overfoiling on the very edge, but that's on the edge. I'm not worried about that. Now I'm going to save that other piece of foil because I can use that with the Pinkfresh Studio solid foil plate, but I like to do those all at once. Since my foil machine is out and already nice and hot, I'm going to go ahead and do my sentiments. And I am using the Perfet Sentiments hot foil plate. And I'm using here, this is black glimmer foil from Spellbinders. Gorgeous, gorgeous foil. It doesn't always have to be shiny gold or silver. So once again, I placed that down onto my Hammermill cardstock. I took that glimmer plate or my hot foil plate, placed it face down and held that in place with that washi tape, and then repeated those same steps I did earlier. So this is really great because it foils all of these sentiments at one time. I just carefully peel back that foil, everything foiled perfectly. And once again, I will save this extra foil and use it with that solid hot foil plate. So I love how these all turned out. There's also a coordinating die that will die cut all of the sentiments out at once. And I love doing this when I just quickly need a sentiment to add to a card. I have them all just kind of popped into a little bag in my drawer. Now that I have my foiling done, I'm going to work on my stenciling. This is the first layer out of that Songbirds on a Branch stencil set. And this is going to be the open part of the leaves. I'm going to use Key Lime as my first ink to lay down color. I like to use my stencils on a Make Art station. So I just place the magnets all over on the corners and then one in the middle just in case, and going in both directions, left to right and right to left to get good coverage. I'm going to quickly wipe off any excess ink there, and then I'm bringing in Sunshine ink and just adding dabs of that all over the background to kind of give some of these leaves a highlight area. The next layer of the stencil is going to add a little bit of detail to these leaves. So I'm going to line that up. And this time I'm going to ink blend with olive ink, which is a really nice dark green. Once again, just blending on that color. I am using the Gina K Designs blending brushes, but you can use whatever you have in your stash. I'll actually be using a few different blender brushes today, and I'll tell you why I use them through each one. The Gina K Designs one, I love the size of them. I love just how they apply color. They're just a really good quality brush. Here I just quickly added some Sapphire ink to kind of give this a little bit more contrast to my leaves just in some areas. I'm bringing in the third layer of the stencil, which is the body of the birds, and then also the base layer of the flowers. Now there's also some little spots there for the beaks, which I am using the Stamp Market detail blending brushes. They are really small, and it's allowing me to get into that little bitty area without getting all that orange into the rest of my project. So I wiped off that excess ink, covered them up with that washi tape, and now I'm coming in with Misty Coast, and this is just a really, really light gray. This is going to be the main color or the body of my birds, and I'm going really light-handed. I really didn't want to show a ton of color on the birds, or I didn't want them to be too dark. I really wanted kind of just soft and whimsical. Now for a little fun and to give this just a spot of color, I'm going to bring in some purple. So this one is Candy Violet. Now this is pretty dark, so you want to be a little careful when you get to the birds. But I added it first to the flowers and the little buds, and then I'm going on the very outer edge of the body of the birds. I actually discovered this when I was blending this the first time as like a walkthrough, and I over blended my purple, but it looked so pretty, so now I'm doing it on purpose. Now I brought in my blue blending brush that already had some blue ink on it, and I'm doing that same thing, just very, very lightly going over the outer edges of my birds and even a little bit into that base layer of the flower. Now I'm bringing in that fourth layer of the stencil, and all of the Pinkfresh studios have stencil 1, 2, 3, and 4 listed in the top corner so you know what order to go. For this last layer, starting with the flowers, I brought in Regal Kiss, which is super dark purple. Now for the head of the birds, I'm bringing in sky blue. So it's a very, very light blue. It actually kind of reminds me of like a parakeet blue. And then I'm going to add a little bit of extra detail and shading to that as well. And this one is going to be the Sapphire. I'm very careful with this one. I dab off a lot of that excess ink onto my work surface, but it is such a beautiful combination, which this actually inspired the background that I will be creating because I really loved these two blues together. So here we have that finished stenciled background, which would look great on a card front all on its own, but I'm going to use the coordinating die to die cut out these pieces. I'll move on to working on the background, and I'm starting with sky blue. Now this time I'm starting at the bottom of the cardstock. This is actually Neenah 80-pound cardstock, and I am using an Altenew blending brush. They have kind of this grip on the top. They are flat bristles, and they just are really, really great for applying a lot of color all over the background. There's no bristle marks. I just love them for my backgrounds. The second color here is Summer Shower, blending that into that lighter blue towards the bottom. And then I'm going to turn my cardstock so I can work on the other end and come in with Sapphire Blue. So loving this color combination. It's just a super dark blue, and just wait till you see this blend. It looks so airbrushed and perfect for blending. I love this color combination, but I wanted to pump up that contrast just a little bit. So I will be bringing in Regal Kiss. Now, as far as my blending brushes go, one thing I wanted to explain is some people watercolor, some people Copic color and collect, all of those mediums. I love ink blending. So that is why I invest so much in my ink blending tools and use them for different purposes. To do my dry embossing with a CoverPlate die, I will be using this brand new Floral Grid CoverPlate from Pinkfresh Studio. I want this to push this design into the back of my cardstock. So I'm going to take my cardstock piece and have that colored panel face up. So my back piece is touching the CoverPlate. Now for the sandwich, I have my main platform on my Platinum 6 machine. I have a rubber mat. And then I'm going to take my die cut or my cover plate and my cardstock and flip it down so my color piece is on top of that rubber mat. And I'm going to tilt it just a little bit so it's not hitting the cover plate straight on. It's going to hit a corner first when I run it through. And then I have this blue kind of plastic shim or embossing mat they call it. I'm not really sure what they call it, but it came, I think, with my machine. And I placed it on top and I run that through. So this embossed my cover plate into my panel, and it's got this great textured raised background. Now you could use either side. I just really liked that grid kind of up onto my cardstock and just really added a lot of interest to this. I went through and picked out the pieces that I wanted to use that I had die cut out from my ink blended or stenciled panel, and I started laying them out. My further back pieces are going to be attached down flat to the card front. I started with a Tombow tape runner, but it really wasn't holding up to that textured background. So I'm going to switch over to some liquid glue, and this is the Gina K Designs Connect glue that I have in a little mini bottle. So it's got a great fine tip on it and is really nice for kind of getting into those small lines like the branches. So I started adding that on there. Those are my further back pieces. And I did go back to my previous piece and start just kind of prying that up a little bit. I didn't want to completely pull it up and risk ripping my paper. So I'm just adding little dabs of glue underneath of those leaves. I wanted to add a little bit of dimension to my elements here, so I attached foam squares behind my bird and the leaves. I did not trim them so thin that they fit behind the branch. I just did the leaves and the bird and then added that over the front of the other leaves that I had attached down. Now my sentiment, I also put on some foam squares, and I'm going to tuck this kind of right into this little pocket where my bird is and that branch is hanging down. I thought it just left such a great opening for a sentiment, and there are tons to choose from that Perfet Sentiments set. But I did just a note because that's a pretty general occasion to send for. Off screen, I trimmed my panel down to 4 by 5 1/4, and I'm adding a piece of double-sided foam, so it's got adhesive on both sides with a backer paper. I added that to the back of my panel, and then I have a side-folding white card base that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I have it held shut with a little rolled-up washi tape so it stays shut while I attach my panel. I finished off the front of the card by adding a little bit of sparkle using my Connect glue and some of these jewels from Pinkfresh Studio. I just picked them up with my embellishment wand and attached those with the glue. So that finishes off my card project. I hope you enjoyed it and were able to get some tips and information about blending through this as well, and taking a look at your cover plates and using them for dry embossing. Thanks so much for stopping by today. Here are a few other videos I think you might enjoy.